Hey, so this is the end of week 4, and it was a pretty crazy week, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. So, what I did this week is I worked on Wilcoxon. I was supposed to finish it this week, but that didn't happen, and there's a few reasons for that, which we'll get into. But right now, I just kind of finished heating the rudiments, and then the next one's old Sue, and I think I still have about 12 more left. I could be wrong, but yeah. So basically, I'm going to take an extra week to continue working on this book. So anyway, so Monday was the first day that I was supposed to be working on this book again. But the first day, I was hitting my snare drum, and I was hearing this really, really weird snare buzz in my wires. So what happened was, I thought that my snare was broken. So I don't know if you can still hear it. Let me play it right now. So, snare's off right now. Snare on. Right, you can't really hear it that much, but basically what's happening is the snare resonates as soon as I hit, but then afterwards what happens is it kind of has this weird kind of like wow wow kind of sound that happens. It's very delayed. So it was driving me insane. So what I was doing was I was messing with the tuning of the bottom head a lot, which usually I don't really touch, but I was messing with it. I still couldn't fix the sound. I tried for so long, and I decided that I need to go get a new drum head for my reso, for my snare side head. So I did. I went there, I got it, I tuned it, and that was all good. Then once I tuned it and I went to play, it still made the sound. So what I did is I retuned it. I checked that maybe it was the relationship between the top head and the bottom head. So then I looked up a bunch of tunings, and I found one tuning that I know works for this drum. This is a Ludwig Superphonic, the 6.5, and still was buzzing. I don't know what it was. So then I figured that maybe it had to do with the alignment of my snare wire. So then I flipped it over, and I was messing with the snare wires to make sure that they were resting properly, so that one side wasn't pressing too hard compared to the other side. And still wasn't working at all. So what I did was I decided that I would buy a new top head as well, which is this one, the Evans Genera HD, which has a little bit of it suppresses overtones a little bit. So I thought that my tuning was just bad, and that I needed to get something that would suppress some of the overtones a little bit more. But still, once I got it, still wasn't good. So anyway, that's 2 days now. So I ordered it on Monday, and then Tuesday it arrived. So Monday, I spent the whole day basically just trying to fix this snare drum, and it wasn't working. But I figured it all out on, I think, Wednesday morning. So it all has to do with sympathetic snare buzz. So what it is normally when you have some snare buzzing that happens sympathetically, what happens is you hit the rack tom, and then you have snares resonating. So I don't know if you can hear that. So, and you can kind of hear the buzzing now. That's the problem that I was dealing with. Anyway, hopefully that's not too loud. So that's the problem. But what was happening is I was getting sympathetic snare buzz by just hitting the snare drum. So you can hear it right now. What happened is I was hitting the snare drum. The snare drum was making the rack toms resonate, and then the rack toms resonating was making the snare resonate again later. So it was like sympathetic vibration from the snare drum to the rack toms, and then the rack toms vibration back to the snare as sympathetic snare buzz, but it was delayed. So that's what's happening. Hitting the rack tom is creating delayed snare buzz later. So the solution was to just put some moon gels on. So if I put some moon gels on the rack toms, it helps the problem a lot. And then putting it on the snare obviously helps too. But I need to put it on more than just the snare drum. The rack toms need to be controlled for the snare to sound all right. So anyway, that's what I did. And the way that I figured it out was I just held down the rack toms with my hands and hit the snare. So it was coming from the snare. It's just, it was the snare making the rack toms vibrate, which was making the snare vibrate later. So pretty crazy. But anyway, so now it sounds fine. The reason why it was bothering me was because it was fine when I was playing quiet, but when I was playing accented notes, or when I was ending on an accented note, you would hear the buzzing. It was really, really weird. So anyway, there you go. So the next thing is this book. So I was going through this book this week, and I think I only went through like 3 different patterns or 3 different solos. I did modern flam accents, flam accent fantasy, new downfall, and then heating the rudiments. So heating the rudiments, for some reason for me, this solo is super, super, super hard. I kept trying to play it properly, but I wasn't able to do it. I don't know why. So anyway, I played it really, really well, but then there was one accent that I didn't hit properly in the place at the end when there's a paradiddles and triplets. There's this one accent that I wasn't happy with, and I kept trying and trying to get it right, but I ended up spending a whole day on it. So I ended up spending a whole entire day on it, and I still didn't get it right. It actually sounded a little bit worse than before. So that kind of got me to think that, first of all, this is my first time going through this book properly. So it shouldn't be like absolutely perfect. It should be good, but I think I'm being a little bit too strict, at least for now. I think that I can be a little bit more of a perfectionist later when I come back to it. But this is just my first time going through it, so I don't think I should be too hard on myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it as it is, even though there's still this one sound that I'm not too happy with, and maybe I'll come back to it eventually. But hopefully with the later things that I do, with the rudiment ritual and with the lifetime warm-up, hopefully that'll help me so when I come back to this later, it will sound a lot better, or it will be a lot easier for me to make it sound good. This week is my last week to work on these solos. So I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 solos left. So that's a lot of solos. 3 in a day is pretty crazy. Maybe I'll be able to do it, maybe not. What will happen if I don't have time is I'll just skip the 3 camps variations, because those are classics and I kind of know them already. There you go. So this week, fixed my snare drum buzz problem, was working on my recording. I got a few done, but I still need to work on it, and I'm giving myself 1 more week to get through these solos. So yeah, that's basically it. So end of week 4, I should be moving on, but I'm going to give myself 1 more week, and hopefully I can finish this book.